to the Honorable Godwin Fridays, joining us here on the New Times program. So let me take this opportunity and say good day and welcome. Happy New Year, Dr. Friday, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Colin. Thank you. Good morning to all of our listeners here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and for those who are listening abroad. We are so grateful that you take the time to be here with us. We look forward to a wonderful program. Thank you, Colin, for all the work that you've been doing this morning. I've been listening, and you certainly have been hitting the nail on the head with respect to the failures of this budget. There's a failure substantively and there's a failure procedurally, in the sense that the content of the budget has failed people, and the fact that in terms of procedure, that the government didn't even bother. The members of the government, the ministers, didn't even bother to defend the budget. So I just want to let everybody know that, of course, I was on briefly last Monday, but we had the budget, so I didn't have. This is my first full-length program for the year, so welcome back. We have this is a very, very interesting time in our country, and we, of course, every year we turn the corner. We look forward more and more to having a chance for the people to vote to decide who they prefer to have run the country. And given the disgraceful performance that we saw from the government in the last budget, we see very clearly that they have lost their way, that they have failed to deliver in terms of the content, and they have failed to even defend the budget. As you put it, Colin, they were running from the budget, their own budget. They did not take the opportunity to defend it. I just want to say greetings because it's as I said, the first full-length program in the year. Greetings to all of my constituents, first and foremost in the constituency of Northern Grenadines, to the wonderful people of Bequia and Mustique, and we thank you so much for continuing to give me the support and the confidence that I need to go forward and to do the work here that we're doing all over the country. I want to say thank you as well to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to the people here in the mainland and the Southern Grenadines who have been so encouraging in every way. When I go out and meet people, whether it's on the streets of Kingstown and the villages that I go to, you know that I do this as a regular basis, Colin. This is my modus operandi. I go and I meet the people where they are, and they have been so encouraging. They have been so supportive. They really are the wind in my sails, and I'm looking forward to doing that. As I said in my New Year's Day message, that I am really looking forward to going out into the communities and meeting people where they are. I know that the people of this country, they are going through a very difficult time. They want to know that somebody cares, that somebody is listening, that somebody is going to do something about the hardship and the difficulties that they are meeting. And I have assured them when I meet them, and continue to do so, my colleagues in the New Democratic Party, they have done likewise. They've gone out into their constituencies, letting the people know that we're listening, that we are in partnership with them to try and make this country better for all of us, not just for some people. That our focus is on the situation here in this country, because it is difficult. And that we will do something about it. We are not just going to make empty promises. Well, people know me by now, that I am not the sort of person who will look you in the eye and say something and don't intend to follow through on it. I'd rather not say if I don't think I can do it. And so that is how we intend to proceed. And when I come around again and I meet you, we can continue that conversation, because it is very important that if, and as I do, wish to become the leader of this country, to become the prime minister of this country, to become the representative again for the Northern Grenadines, and my colleagues to become representatives in the various constituencies, We have to know what the people want us to represent them about. We can't assume that. And the only way to know that for sure is to go and meet the people and talk to them. Don't feel that you're superior to them, you know more than them, that you have all the answers when you don't even know what the questions are. This is something that we have been practicing in the New Democratic Party. In this new year, if it's a party resolution as such, that is that we would lift our game even more in that regard, that we will go out and meet more and more of the people of this country and give them that assurance that they can rely on us when we say that we are going to make things better. They can rely on us when we say that we understand the difficulties that they're going through in this country because they tell us, and that they can rely on us to do something about it, to make things better, to create jobs, to create business opportunities for people, to make our communities safe again. These are some of the things that people tell us that they want us to address with them. Colin, you've been talking about the disgraceful performance, if you like, of the government with respect to the budget. Now, on Monday evening, last Monday evening, the Minister of Finance, Camilo Gonzalez, presented his budget for over 5 hours. And he read it back and then gave me a copy and the other members of the House, of the our side, to prepare our response. And we started diligently to prepare because we know the importance of this exercise. It is the most important exercise in the legislative calendar because it sets the program up for the year. And the government has an obligation to present it. The minister started the process by presenting his budget document. But even as he was doing so, he said that there were some areas that he will not cover in any detail or may not deal with at all. One of them being security and crime. As you know, that is one of the critical areas that must be dealt with, because he said that the prime minister would deal with that when he spoke. And so there were other areas in tourism that he thought that the Minister of Tourism would expand on, mobilization and so forth. That's the way in which, the budget, as long as he spoke 5 hours and so on, there's a lot of fluff and a lot of time wasted on self-congratulations about things in the past and using flowery language and so forth to try and present something that was disconnected from reality. But he wasted a lot of time in that. So it was 5 hours long, but still he did not get into some of the ministries. So the expectation was that the ministers would take this opportunity to get up and praise their budget and to say, well, this is what I am getting out of it in my ministry. This is how I'm going to expand on what the Minister of Finance said. But all of them run from it. They sit down there, the Prime Minister, the Speaker call for speakers. None of them would get up and say that this is why I support this budget. This is why I am happy to be in this ministry, because here's what the budget does to me. None of them would get up to do it, except for Saboto, Caesar, the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, early in Tuesday afternoon, and Montgomery Daniel. Those were the only two members. The Prime Minister was in the House, as I said in my press conference the other day, you've heard others have said, when the Speaker called for debate, and he failed to debate, or failed to, more importantly, get up and give the stamp of approval to his budget. His budget. It's not the Minister of Finance's budget. The Minister of Finance presents it on behalf of his government. But he had a duty to get up and say, well, yeah, this is, what we have put together. This is why we believe this is good for the country. But they did not do so. And it was a dereliction of duty on the part of the government, because they have an obligation to present the budget to the people. Even if nobody else responds or said anything, it is what they owe to the people of the country, to the parliament, to come and say, listen, this is my blueprint for the year. Here is the whole overall picture of it, as the Minister of Finance presented. And the individual ministers will come and give a little bit more detail so that the people know where the country is going. That is their duty. It's not a matter of looking at the opposition and looking to hear what other people are saying, whether it's in the press or elsewhere. That is part of the process, but it does not take away from the necessary obligation that they have to present their budget. And this is where they failed the people. Now, in terms of content, they also failed the people miserably, because as we had said going into the budget process earlier on, this has to be a people's budget. The people of this country has been through so much over the past several years. Of course, we had the global crisis with COVID, but we also had the unique crisis here of the volcano erupting and disrupting lives, disrupting farms and production and so forth. And people have been through hardship. Then, of course, following all of that, you had the cost of living crisis that we are all still struggling with. And so this is an opportunity. The economy is starting to rebound. They said that the economy grew last year by over 5% and or 6%, and that this year was expected to grow by 5%. Well, if that is so, that is good news. But the people of the country also need to know that this is somehow going to improve their own lives. You can't just have growth for growth's sake, where it happens on paper, but not in the villages and communities around the country. That is really what is needed. And so we say that that has to be the focus now. You know, this government, they are so carried away by their projects and their concrete and steel and mortar and so forth. They forget that those things are only important to the extent that they improve the lives of the people of the country. They are not there as trophies or as evidence of the magnificence of the government for them to go and stand up and brag and boast about it.
Or is it that it's being used to try and create votes for them?
Yeah, you know, it's all about show. Mm-hmm. And I call them shiny objects. If you don't link them to how the people are living and how it's going to improve lives, that's all it is. And so when they have these projects, you have to demonstrate that they're going to affect people, that they're going to affect their lives better. The point is that what we had said is that this budget has to deal with the current needs of the people. And what people are feeling is tremendous hardship out there. And that, some of it is international, some of it is domestic, because the policies of the government is not trickling down to the people. And I say trickling down, you see, I believe that when you're designing policies, you have projects, you have investment opportunities coming in from the private sector, that you must have a plan as to how this is going to affect people. How are the people going to be integrated in it? That's a plan. Or some people say you do it and it will, you know, if you build it, they will come. That's kind of like a trickle-down thing. Just let it happen naturally. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And so what is happening here now is that a lot of people are finding out that no matter all the projects, all the buildings, all this stuff you see going on, you know, there's still hardship in the country. And so when they presented the budget, I was looking for them to say, okay, these are specific things that are going to help people. Of course, they have said they are going to increase the minimum wage by a certain amount so that nobody will work for less than $50 a day or for $1,000 a month or something that would be. And then they have to now detail it in each categories. As you know, there are about 7 categories of workers for which there are minimum wage standards that are set in those categories. They have to outline them. But you're giving those things on the one hand. That in itself is an improvement, but it is not going to deal with the fundamental problem of the increase in cost of living, because they did not then fit that into a broader context, which we had presented and said, first of all, you reduce the VAT, and that is more beneficial than what they're doing right now, just that from 16 to 13%. And we would, when they had brought in the customs service charge to remove it so that the cost of goods also will go down. That is the context which would help make these minimum wage increases real for people, because they have also, you have the government is lowering costs of goods by reducing that, and at the same time the wages are inching up a bit, because as we all know, I mean, $1,000 is still not going to cut it for a family who is have to meet the high prices of electricity, VINLEC, that is, water, transportation costs to take their children to and from school, and then, of course, the most basic of all, in the grocery stores. But with the reduction in VAT and that increase, it would make it much more effective. But they're not listening to that, of course. It takes them, it seems like a number of years before they start catching on that maybe the NDP has something here, as they have done now with the student loans. I've seen, as you said, as I said in my budget presentation and in the press conference on Wednesday gone, the one thing that they had taken that really pleased me was that they have adopted our policy of reducing the interest rates on student loans to 4.5%. We have said that 4.5% would be our maximum, but we will drop it to 3% or 4% if the administrative cost for administering the program is such that it allows us to do so, and to take into account default. The important thing is they have accepted that it makes good sense, and so that they're going to implement it. And it's so shamefaced, bold-faced. They wouldn't even say, well, here we are, we are in line with the opposition in this. In fact, the Prime Minister, when we had put forward this proposal back in 2020 during the election campaign, and we had a grand poster outside of NDP headquarters here to tell people about it, so that we were serious about it. He said basically that it would bust the budget, that it would fail. It was not sustainable. It was not something that the NIS and the student loan company could manage. And now all of a sudden they've gone completely, 180, and they have taken it on board. But that's fine, because people will benefit. But if they had done it back in 2020, those students would have benefited a lot more.
True.
They would have already have seen 3 years of reduced interest rates and saved thousands of dollars on the repayment of their loans. But that is something that we will perfect when we get in office. They have started the process, but they have not yet implemented it, and they haven't implemented in the way that we would do so to make sure that there's a real benefit to those people and encourage young people to go and study. Our best bet for a bright future in this country is to have educated, trained people in this country in all aspects of life. And we've had this challenge with our education system, where it has been geared towards what people call the academic stream and so forth. But we also have to deal with the technical and vocational education. And you've heard me talk about that, and I'll say more about it. And of course, later on in the week, the member for Southern Grenadines, General Terence Olivier, will also do so. So here we are, Colin.
Doc, let me ask you this. What obviously the ULP and the government's response is always going to be taxes. It seems like that's their trend. Tax and repeat, tax and repeat.
Well, I'm coming to that.
The argument will be that obviously, how else is the government going to generate revenue? Is that the only way the government could generate revenue to meet its obligations?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The government, every government, yes, you have taxes and so forth. But you have to also make sure that you don't tax people into the ground. Taxes are necessary for providing services. We understand that. But you have to balance that against the needs of the people at the particular time. Otherwise, you're just simply going to be creating more misery for people in the country. And that is what you talk to ordinary people out there, and they will tell you that this is not a poor people's budget. This is not a budget that caters to poor people, because they give you with one hand so that they're raising the minimum wage. And don't forget, 20% of the people in the country are unemployed in any event. So minimum wage they're not going to benefit from that, because they don't even have a job. And for young people, it's 41% of the people who are unemployed. So again, that doesn't really help those persons. If you don't have a job, then the minimum wage don't mean nothing to you. For those people who are employed, however, yes, it will create a little bit of an increase. But at the same time, you have the government taking so much away in taxes. They're giving I told somebody the other day, I was talking to somebody in a shop in Kingstown, and she said, I said, well, they're giving it with one hand and taking back with the other. And she said, no, they're giving it with one hand and they're taking back with two. So the feeling out there is that the government, they're not serious about recognizing the hardship that people are feeling. And so they're just taking what they want, and then you have to fend for yourself. So this budget is definitely not a poor people's budget. It does not deal with the hardship that people are feeling. It is disconnected from reality. I said that in my budget presentation. I was listening to the Minister of Finance, and he was painting this glowing picture. And I'm sure many people out there who had the time and the energy to stay and listen for the 5 hours would have been saying, well, this all sounds very good, but which country is he talking about? He can't be talking about St. Vincent, because the reality on the ground for most people is quite different, harder, tougher. As you were saying this morning, it's meat hard for boil, because it's so difficult that you can't really, reconcile what the minister was saying with what is happening out there. And we know this because I go there and I talk to people, and you talk to people in the street, and the minister should know better. He should go out on the streets of Kingston and find out what people are thinking. But these taxes are all related, mostly all related to the operation and ownership of vehicles and so forth. And there are so many of them, driver's license, conductor's license, license for vehicles and all of various categories, learner's permit, driver's permits, dealer's license, everything going up, some by 25% and some less.
Now, but when they did that, Dr. Friday, there was a huge pushback from the public. Would you say that maybe that pushback was the reason why they got cold feet and wanted to opt out of the budget debate? So
I am sure it had something to do with that, because they recognize that, hey boy, we made a real boo-boo here. This is not going on well with people. The more we talk about it, is the more we will reinforce that perception. How am I going to get up? You have to talk about your taxes. You can't just disregard them. And you have to get up and say, well, why this is going to do. And nobody, it seems, wanted to do so. Even the Minister of Finance in his wrap-up spent little time in it, except just on the correction, to say that he had presented the wrong figure. You won't blame the press for it because they reported it. Well, they reported what he gave to them, and so the stomach wasn't there, it seems to me, in the government. They all were chicken. They were afraid to come out and defend their budget. And if they don't have the gumption, if they don't have the heart to defend it, if they don't have the confidence, that's what it is, in their own budget, how they can go to the people and say, well, listen, this is good for you. This is better for the country. This is necessary. This is, there's a little bit of sugar and there's a little bit of salt, but it overall is good for the country. They did not do that. There are ministers who have amongst themselves, their ministries, over $640 million of spending that they control. And they didn't get up once in the parliament to say, well, this is what I'm going to do with the money. This is why this money is useful. This is how we can make lives better. So the pushback that you heard on the radio following Camilo's presentation of the budget on Monday night, that is part of the reason, I believe, why they were getting cold feet, why they seemed very, very hesitant, nervous, scared to get up and defend this budget. How else can you explain that? That to be present in the House, you have ministers present there in the House, you have the Prime Minister present, you have the young senators, you thought they would have been jumping at the opportunity to say, here's my first budget presentation, let me take this opportunity. The ministers and them not getting up, but this is my time to shine. Instead, everybody sit there on their hands and wait for the Minister of Finance to wrap up the debate. This is unacceptable. It just tells me the government, they've lost their way. They don't see what to govern. And so the sooner we have elections in this country, we have a transition to a government that want to work on behalf of the people, the better that is.
You think that there was some relief on the members, maybe some of the members on the government side, that the budget was called off so early?
Well, I don't know what they were thinking, because whatever they were thinking was obviously the wrong thing, because they should have been there to defend their budget, and they were not. And they should have been there to support the Minister of Finance, or at least to make the case on behalf of the individual ministries, and they were not there. And it's just simply, it's unprecedented. That has never happened in this country. Yes, we've had time when the budget had been wound up earlier, even this present government. You will recall that when a couple of years ago during COVID, when they had a number of members who had tested positive for COVID on the government side, and very few persons, some of the members on my side had to be excluded because, members on the government side were in close proximity with them, and the protocols were they couldn't be in the parliament either. So half of the members of the parliament didn't get a chance to present, and they won't get debated. Some other time there was the government wound up the debate as well when Ralph was Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. So therefore, as Minister of Finance, he had presented the budget. He had defended the budget. But in this situation now where he is the Prime Minister, he has 4 hours to speak and he doesn't use 1 second of it. I spoke for 4 hours. He didn't spend 1 minute in the Parliament to listen to the presentation of the Leader of the Opposition. I mean,
what sort of message is that sending?
Well, it seems to me like he's not interested in what's happening in the Parliament. It's disrespectful, of course, to the office of the Leader of the Opposition. But we've come to expect worse from them with respect to this. But it's not me. It's not Godwin Friday. It's the office of the Leader of the Opposition, which is a constitutional position that I am required to fulfill. And the government has a responsibility to at least show some respect for the office, and that you are paying attention to what is being said so that you can then rebut or to answer the questions that are raised in my presentation. He didn't do that, and instead he was elsewhere, and it's just simply not acceptable. I've never seen a situation where this occurred in this country, and the government is just simply, it's lost its way, it's out of touch in terms of the content of its budget, because it's taxing people at a time when people can't afford to pay anymore, giving it with one hand, and as a lady, I'll repeat what she said, giving it with one hand and taking back with two, making things harder for the people in the country. Nothing was said about crime as to how they're going to tackle crime, this terrible problem that we're having with crime in the country. Last year, we had a record number of homicides, 55. We didn't just break the record, it was shattered, and nothing in the budget about it. Nothing to say, well, listen, we're going to have an investment in forensic lab or modern crime fighting techniques so that we can investigate and prosecute these offenses in a way that would allow for a greater success by the criminal justice system in bringing persons to justice. But that is not something that they obviously thought was important enough to address in the budget. It was not addressed in the Minister of Finance's presentation. He said that the Prime Minister administers national security would deal with it and did not. And crime is one of the critical issues affecting this country. And in the budget, they said nothing about it. In the whole budget debate, I said more about it in my presentation than the Minister of Finance did or anybody in the government said. And Major was prepared to address this matter at length and would have loved the opportunity to respond after the Prime Minister had spoken, because he was presenting the government's position on crime. The Minister of Finance said he didn't deal with it because the Prime Minister would do so. It only makes sense to hear what the government's position is, given that the Minister of Finance didn't deal with it before.
And seeing that it's such a major issue.
And seeing it's such an important issue. And so this is something that, again, it's a dereliction of duty. The budget ultimately it does not address the urgent problems of the country, the needs of our people. It says nothing about crime. It's a disconnect from the ordinary lives of the people, and people will tell you that when they hear it, those who listen, and that it is simply not acceptable for the government ministers and for the Prime Minister not to defend or to get up to say something in support of their budget. The Minister of Finance must have felt like he was set adrift somewhere in a raft to take all the licks for the taxes that he increased and so forth, without having the other ministers, especially the Prime Minister, defend it. And then, of course, there's too much increase in taxes. This is not a time for increase in taxes. This is a budget that should be focused on the needs of people, making things better for them, providing job opportunities. 41% of young people are unemployed, 20% of the general population unemployed. For women, it's up 30%, 25% of women unemployed. That's a crisis by any stretch of the imagination. For young people, it's an existential crisis. And we lose many of them to antisocial behavior, to crime. because they're not being engaged constructively and because they're listening to the wrong sort of urgings. And that is something that we have to address urgently and seriously, and this government failed to do so. Colin, we have, as you know, a jobs crisis in this country. Too few people have jobs. Too many of our young people feel that they can't get ahead in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Even those who have jobs, they find it difficult to repay their student loans or very other obligation. They have to buy a car or something to be able to maintain to go to work back and forth. And they're looking for opportunity to leave, to go somewhere else. And I'm not talking going necessarily to Canada and the United States where the grass, people think, is always greener, but to other countries in the Caribbean, because as the PayPal study from a year or two ago said, we are the lowest paying country in terms of wages in the entire CARICOM. And we also have high taxes. We have high cost of living. You have other countries over the end of the year, they give a little bonus to public servants, to persons on public assistance. They give them that to help with the cost of living situation, especially at the Christmas season. In St. Vincent, what the government does, it comes and it taxes you. Nothing in return, in recognition for the hardship that the people are feeling. So, I mean, the government quite clearly has let young people down, and they have not demonstrated that they take their concerns to heart and that they will address them. They say, okay, they call about all kinds of education revolution or whatever, and then they say to the people, you've been to school, now it's up to you, go and catch as catch can. That is not sufficient to be able to help the young people to survive in this country. We need to have a plan to create jobs. And as you know, the New Democratic Party, we have said repeatedly that the country cannot go forward just simply by begging and borrowing. You have to have an economy. And our plan is to build on the 4 pillars of our economy. Agriculture is critical to the economic well-being of this country and of our people. I heard the Minister of Finance in his budget presentation talking about agriculture as though you get the impression that this is a new industry that we are creating in this country. You know, that somehow they are just discovering the potential of agriculture and that they are going to develop it and so forth. Agriculture has declined to 5% of GDP because this government has demonstrated no serious interest in developing agriculture. You cannot have an agricultural plan where all the minister does is essentially say every other month there's a different commodity that he wants to export, and they have a 40-foot container or a 20-foot container and so forth, whether it's fish or ground provision. That is not a plan for agriculture. So we have said that we need to have a plan to revitalize agriculture. It requires us to do things differently. I've given the farmers this commitment that I'm looking out for their interests. We have to have inputs putting back into it. That is to say, the means for them to use fertilizers and various other means to enhance their productivity. Using new techniques, whether it's in irrigation and greenhouses and so forth. This is something that was recognized a long time ago, but the government talks a good talk and it doesn't do it. Now they say they have all these implements that they're bringing in. They're going to spend $29 million or 20 million, whatever, $11 million. And they have all this stuff that's coming. They have water tanks down at Otley Hall. Long ago, we tell them, why you don't just give these out to the people? You can leave them here in the sun to bust up and thing and so forth. You know, the minister at the time, I think it was Minister Francis, said they don't have enough for everybody, so they ain't giving. Seems to me that means that they ain't giving any to anybody. But these are things that they have let lapse. And all of a sudden, they're discovering agriculture. Imagine that. You know, now that it has gone down to 5% of the gross domestic product of the country. Not only that, fisheries, which is part of the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, that is something that's been totally neglected. And good talk again. They're talking now about creating expanding the fleet, that they have money to put into fleet expansion so that the fisher folk can have more bigger boats, better equipped boats, and so forth. So they could go out for more than just the morning, and they can sleep and they can on the boat, so they could be out there for a week or so and come back with a catch. It allows them to be able to sell and to pay their expenses and have a little thing to put aside. In a sense, it makes them more productive to transform from subsistence fishing so that we have a more commercially based fishing industry. They've talked about this for the last 15 years and they've not delivered. Now they said in this present budget that they have $4.4 million that they're borrowing from the Alba Bank. And this money is going to be used to create a fleet that the government will own. They can buy 4 trawlers. And apparently I heard recently that they're going to build these trawlers. They're trying to build these trawlers in Cuba. I didn't know if Cuba had a shipbuilding industry. And then the government is going to own them. They're going to hire people as deckhands and so forth. They say they will train fishermen and then afterwards they can go and buy their own boat if they want to. Where are they going to get the money from to buy the boat if they want to? The government is going to take the $4.4 million they get in loans from the Alba Bank and create a fleet that the government will own. Where are the local fisher folk? Where are the fishermen going to get a part of this pie? Look at the model they have had in Grenada. The government owns a fishing fleet. It's ordinary people who own the fishing boats. And when they do well with their small boat of 30 feet, they go and they buy a bigger boat of 40 feet and they sell this one, or they add, and they have 2 or 3 boats that they own and so forth. And they are doing well. They export 10 times as much as we do. The value of our exports in seafood is less than 1% of GDP. In fact, less than 1/4%, which tells me that we are not anywhere near where we need to be. That is something that we are going to do in the New Democratic Party to rebuild our economy. And then, of course, we have the tourism sector, a lot of potential there, and I'll talk more about it in another program. And the bit I said just now about the fisheries, the blue economy. For me, those in the blue economy, the 2 sectors the 2 industries that I focus on, well, 3 really, is the fishing industry I just talked about, rebuilding Otley Hall, the Otley Hall Marina, and shipyard. I don't think young people understand what Otley Hall is when we talk about it. So maybe we have to take more time and explain it and so forth. We might have to go and do a program from there, Colin, so people can see what we're talking about. And the potential that is there to have a ship repair and rebuilding industry, and that is something that will create jobs for hundreds of people, well-skilled jobs, jobs that pay well, the kind of jobs that we want to promote here: electricians, welders, carpenters, divers, all kinds of painters, all kinds of things that are skilled work that provides a good income for young people and people in general. But that is completely left to rot. Not a word about it. Well, there is a word about it in the budget, and I did address it in my presentation. In one line, he said that the Minister of Finance said that they're looking for private sector investors to invest in the Otley Hall Marina. And they had said this before in 2020, exactly the same thing, that they're vetting private sector people to take over the marina and develop it, and nothing has been done. So I don't take him at his word when he said that in his present budget. It was just a way, it seems to me, to say, well, okay, we're addressing it, to deflect the criticism that they know they will get from me because I speak about it all the time, because I know of its potential. And it should not have been brought to this state of disrepair by the present government simply because of political reasons. They did not want it to succeed because it would seem to vindicate the vision of Sir James Mitchell and the NDP when they started it all so many years ago. But it needs to be revived. They have to get over that politics. They have to get over it and develop this thing for the people, the young people of this country. So those are the 2 things, and of course the yachting industry that I focus on when it comes to the blue economy, but we will develop it. The fundamental point I want to make, though, well, not fundamental, but one of the points that I want to make, is that in approaching the way we approach the fisheries sector and agriculture is that we will separate fisheries finally and create a Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Conservation. This is a large portfolio by itself. It should not just be a desk in the Ministry of Agriculture. It has tremendous potential for economic development. And also we have to have balancing exploitation, that is to say the use of our resources, with the conservation, so that we can protect this resource going into the future. We will create a separate ministry task with doing that, and let the Minister of Agriculture focus on rebuilding the agricultural sector. And that way, I believe we will show people that we are serious about this, and get the economy finally working again. And I want to tell the farmers out there, I know people still thieving your animals, they're still thieving your crops, and so forth. Help is on the way. I understand the pain that you're feeling. Nobody in this government seems to be listening to you about it. You know, where there's a bunch planting here, or some watermelons there, or a ram, or a sheep or goat, and so forth. To some people, that mightn't seem like much, but to the farmer who's struggling is a lot. And they don't just take once. They go and they come again, and so forth. And I know the frustration that you're feeling, and I will address it. We will have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to predial larceny. Any thieving of farmers' crops, anybody who sell them, the upholder is just as bad as a thief. And so we will deal with it so that farmers can go back to producing, and know that when it's time to harvest, and it's time to reap the benefits of their labor, that they will be able to do so. So that is a promise from me.
All right, Doc, what's interesting in hearing both sides, the ULP and the NDP, it is quite clear. You coined the phrase once, put the money where the pain is. The ULP seems to be all about hotel projects, port projects, taxing. But what we're hearing from the NDP is industries. Let's develop tourism. Let's develop agriculture. Let's create jobs. Taking in fact that right now, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I mentioned this morning on the program, is heavily dependent on imports more than we are on exports. Is this the direction for the New Democratic Party going that will help to turn and change this economy around?
Absolutely, Colin. First of all, you have to have an economy. What are the productive sectors of this country? Agriculture used to be our backbone. They have brought it to its knees, and they haven't replaced it with anything other than begging and borrowing. We have now a national debt of $2.4 billion.
You think it may be more than that?
Well, I believe it is. That I believe that there is stuff that is not being brought to the books there. They could well be, but we don't have any evidence of that, so that's just a belief. But here is the thing: the government, has brought us to this position where its own finances are being restricted, because 34 cents out of every dollar now has to go to service the debt. The debt increased by over 20. The debt servicing, by that I mean how much money you have to pay on an annual basis to pay interest and the pay down on the principal and the fees and so forth, increased by I think like 26% or something between 2023 and 2024. So that means that we are really rapidly heading in the wrong direction. They set up a mechanism called the fiscal responsibility mechanism that was supposed to advise the government as to how they can manage the debt and the fiscal position of the government. But they presented their first report, and the Minister of Finance, I thought would have been sort of saying, look, we put these people in place, we handpicked them to assist us. Here is what they say, and we are going to take it seriously. Instead, he kind of just brushes aside and saying, they have to be given, more resources to develop their, I suppose, expertise or whatever. But I didn't seem to pay much attention to it. Of course, I quoted from it during my budget presentation because I think it has some useful insights there. And I believe that other members will when they go forward. So let me just let our people know that throughout the rest of this week, my colleagues will be making their budget presentation. They will make in a summarized form, the key points that they will make with respect to the presentations on the budget. And it will be interactive, of course. It will be on a program like this, and people could call in and ask questions. So I know that my colleagues will be dealing. I know member for East Kingston, for example, has already cited that document, so maybe I'll deal with it. We have the member for Central Kingston, the Honorable Major Sinclair Leacock, the member for West Kingston, Daniel Cummings. We have the member for Southern Grenadines, we have Senator Bruce, and we have, of course, Nature and Nigel Stevenson, the member for South Leeward. We have colleagues who are ready to go forward with their presentation, and they will be doing so during the course of this week. And you will hear more, some of what I've said here, but also dealing with their own individual portfolios. It is going to be a very, very useful and helpful presentation, and I trust it more that people will tune in and they will listen, and that they will be, I think they will find the time well spent.
All right. There's an anticipation that now that we're in 2024, that an election is closely looming. Coming out of this recent budget, do you think that it helps or hurts the ULP administration leading up to a general election?
Well, I don't see how this could possibly help them because, first of all, as I said, procedurally and substantively, the budget is a budget of missed opportunities. It is a budget that is, it did not cater for the jobs crisis that we have here in the country. It did not cater for the unemployment, the unemployment amongst young people in particular. It did not cater to the cost of living crisis that people are feeling in this country. It did not cater for creating better paying jobs. How we are going to raise the standard of living. Yes, they will say that they're raising the minimum wage and so forth, but the minimum wage is just that. It's the minimum wage. It's the floorboard, so to speak, that you're saying are not allowed to go below that. But a lot of people can't survive on that payment anyway. So those people, especially those working, in the Grenadines, where rents and costs are a lot more than in some places here on the mainland. Those are, that doesn't really fit the bill to say that this is a budget that addresses those key and critical issues. So it's a budget of missed opportunities. It's a budget, not a budget of poor people. It's a budget that taxes poor people. It is a budget that gives with one hand and take back with two. It is a budget that is disconnected from the reality of people's lives. So I don't see how, and then of course they did not get up. They ran away from it. They did not get up to defend it. So how else are we supposed to interpret it that they seem not to have confidence in their own Minister of Finance's presentation? So this is something, of course, they will put spin on it and they will tell you all kinds of things. Right. But you cannot get away from the fact that they did not, most of them, speak on the budget. And whether this is an election year or not, with the passage of time, of course, we get closer and closer to an election. I've been saying for the longest while now that this government is a minority government in the sense that it did not achieve a majority support from the electorate overall. Constitutionally, it was created because our system of government allowed a government, even when they have fewer votes than another party, if they win enough seats, that they can form government. But fundamentally, it is undemocratic, even if constitutional. And so when that situation arises, then the government should try to come back to the people as soon as possible to try and get a mandate, a true mandate from the people to govern. This government, of course, they ran away from that, having taken that position back in 1998 when the NDP won the government with the minority of the votes. And they said, that this is it's undemocratic, that they should have elections sooner, that they will make the country ungovernable and all this nonsense. Well, that kind of talk has resonated because the country has become ungovernable in a sense, because look at the situation with crime in throughout the land. Look at the chaos we saw in the parliament the other day where the prime minister couldn't even rally his own troops to tell him to come and debate their budget. They have lost their way completely, and it's time now for them to go back to the people and say, listen, if you have confidence in us, then support us. Here is my platform. Give us another mandate. That is not going to happen because the people of this country want change. But in any event, they have to do that. They have to go back to the people at some point. So we have gotten into 2024. We are closer to an election. And we believe that election should be called sooner rather than later because the country can't wait any longer. The people can't wait any longer. The disgraceful display we saw in the parliament when they failed to defend their own budget tells me that they are not, they're not really right on the ball when it comes to governing the country, in taking the interests of the people seriously, and in dealing with what I said ought to be the people's budget, the people's concerns. They seem to be more interested in dealing with, other people's problems internationally and so forth. No, nothing wrong with that, and trying to be helpful and peacemaker or whatever. Blessed are the peacemakers. But the point is, we all agree on that. We all support that. But you can't do it at the expense of taking care of the needs right here at home. And the people of this country are crying out for a government who puts them first and say, we are going to deal with your concerns. We understand what your concerns are. We are going to come and meet with you. We're going to find a way to make things better for the people in this country. And what I've said here, high unemployment, low wages, crime situation in the country, lack of business opportunities for our business people, all of these things need to be rectified. And we in the Democratic Party, we are focused on that. This government is not.
All right. What I want to do now, I want to open up the phone lines to persons who would like to call in and to be a part of the program, pose your questions to Dr. Friday. We're also live on the New Democratic Party's Facebook page. You can post your comments. If you want to post a question there too as well, you can please feel free to do that. If you don't want to call and interact, of course, the number is 456-5967. That's the number to call us live in the studio. If you're in the diaspora and you want to reach out to us, you can call us via the Magic Jack. That number is 718-734-5615. That's 718-734-5615. And you can reach out to us here on the New Times program. We're also live on social media, live on the New Democratic Party's Facebook page and YouTube page. So you can jump over there and be a part of that. We have a caller coming in. Let's take this call. Let's see who we have. Caller, welcome to the program. Hello.
Good afternoon. Dr. Anthony Stewart calling here from Union Island.
Good. Glad to have you. Dr. Friday, are you hearing the caller?
I am. I can hear very clearly.
Good. Go ahead.
Yes, my first question has to do with whether there was any arrangement made in the budget to pay the teachers. We know the case is coming up at the end of this month, and the government is going to lose. And I think that is a substantial amount of money to be paid out to the teachers and to the civil servants and policemen who would have brought their COVID-19 case to the courts. Those payments plus the payment to the lawyers on both sides. Was there any provision made for that in the budget?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Of course, in my presentation, I called on the government to basically, terminate the case and just go ahead and pay the teachers, put them back, or not the teachers, all the public servants, teachers, police, and so forth, put them back in their jobs and do what the court said at the High Court, and let's end this vendetta, it seems to me, against the public servants and teachers because they stand up to the government. But there's no provision made for it, and they will have to find the money to deal with it. We have said that we will implement what the court said, and we said that even before the judgment of the court came down, because we believe that what the government was doing was wrong.
So perhaps that will be dealt with a special warrant? Or
well, that's how those things, when they said they're unforeseen, let's say, the special warrant provisions and so forth in the Constitution, in the Finance Administration Act and the Constitution, they're very clear, and they're supposed to be for urgent, unforeseen things that cannot be postponed without doing harm to the national interest. That provision has been abused by this present administration. They've had special warrants, for example, for Christmas party for some mobilization ministry or something. These are things that can be addressed. I would think that this is a matter for those people who have been put out of bread for so long. You don't know, people seem to forget, there are people still suffering there. There are people still there who cannot make their expenses, who have to find other jobs and find things to do to catch as catch can, to meet their obligation, pay their mortgage, pay their student loans, pay their expenses. They're still suffering. And this government is not addressing it. But yes, if that comes to it, that the judgment goes against them, then, as is expected, that they will have to find the money to pay for it.
Well, in the case of the school system, our students are still suffering.
I agree with you. 100%, I agree with you. Some of our most experienced and best teachers have been lost to the system. I know some of them, and all because of what?
The pass rate at Union Island Secondary has fallen to approximately 40% for last year. And we don't know what the previous years are because I don't have the statistics available to me.
Well, I mean, we can assume, quite frankly, if you're taking untrained people, some of them, yes, program people, young people, and putting them in classroom, yes, it's experience for them, but they're not trained teachers, and some of them they were just put there on an emergency basis. And this is not it's not good for our education system. It's not treating our students or young people with the kind of seriousness that is required. And so, of course, there will be fallout, and you being in the system, well, being somebody who takes a great interest in this particular subject, will know.
What items I would like to raise? One has to do with tourism. We have the Emancipation Park at Campbell, Union Island, and we see there that somebody is fencing up the beach in Campbell. I don't know who gives them authority, but we use that beach fairly often. It's one of the more popular beaches currently. We have people go to collect sea moss to eke out a living, and people go there for recreation.
Mm-hmm.
And I see 2 poles planted on the sand itself on the beach. I don't know who is doing it, but I want to call on them to desist from doing so, because the beach is where we go to bathe. We do not have a public portable water supply system here, so we use the beach to get a bath. And
beaches are all public. I mean, that has been, we've had this battle over and over again, and it's been reestablished and enforced from the time these issues arise, that the beaches are public. They are in the domain of the public, that the access to it has to be guaranteed. And so anything that restricts that, well, of course, would not be permitted.
So I'm calling on whoever is attempting to fence the beach to remove the posts they have planted on the sand so that we can continue to enjoy it. The other issue is that of organized crime in Union Island. We have lost, I estimate, more than 100 goats in the month of December. That is people.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. And nothing, as far as I'm aware, nothing has been done about it. And we live in a small community here, population less than 2,000. And anything that happens here, everybody knows what happens. So it just takes a detective or ordinary policeman to investigate.
Well, the authorities need to take it seriously. They don't take pretty larceny seriously enough. I said that just a little bit earlier in the program, that they just leave the farmers to fend for themselves, and that is unacceptable. And people, they're running out of patience, and they're told that they must take these matters to the police, but the police have to respond. They have to say, oh, listen, let me go and investigate and do it for you. It's your sheep and your goat and so forth. Might not sound like big crime and so forth, but for those persons, it's very, very damaging. And it eventually puts them out of production, and they just simply say, well, I'm not going to bother because, I won't be able to reap the fruits of my labor when the time comes. Somebody else will come and take it. That damages.
What I understand is that school children are involved.
This is a matter for the police, though, Stuart. This is whatever information you have. I would urge you to do that and get the matter to stop.
I give a statement to the police already, and I haven't heard anything.
Then let them encourage them, follow up with them, and let them do the investigation and make sure that it stops.
We have a problem. We have a problem with the police in Union Island. They come to spend 1 week, and then another set of police come down to replace them. We have not had that kind of problem before. We used to have sergeants living on Union Island. There are two police houses, one in Ashton, one in Clifton. And well, they're now occupied by homeless people. I don't know if they're using them as homeless shelters now, but we used to have permanent police here. But now we have police come down this week. They go back up, another set comes down. So you make a report and they're telling you the officer who's dealing with it is not here. Wait until they come back. I don't understand. They don't keep files and they don't follow up. We need proper policing in these parts.
Well, this is where the Minister of National Security's presentation in the budget would have been useful to hear if he was saying anything about it, because the police is not just in Union Island, but all over the country. They will tell you that the police, and especially when it comes to radio last, they don't respond in a timely manner, because sometimes they say they don't have transportation, sometimes they can't be bothered. But it's also a matter of how they manage the police service. The management of the police service is it's an all-time low, and morale in the police service is at a low, because they simply are not treating the officers in a way that they feel is fair and even-handed, so that people would be motivated to do their work. Now, I call on everybody: if you're in the service, do your job, do it professionally. That's what you have signed on to, and so you have no excuse not to do your work. But I think that the institution itself has to give encouragement and training and support and promotion and all those things, so that the people would be equipped and motivated to do their job the best way possible.
And even if they could not give a report to us in Parliament, they could report to us otherwise. We have the Minister of National Security, and we have the Minister of Grenadines Affairs. They need to say something.
I agree with you.
All right,
man. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The phone lines are still open, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, please feel free. We have now 21 minutes after the 1 o'clock hour. You can interact with us here on the New Times program by calling the number. It's 456-5967. That's 456-5967. You can call us live in the studio, or you can also reach out to us via the Magic Jack. For those of you in the diaspora, as always, we love to hear from you. 718-734-5615. That's 718-734-5615. You can also send us a message via the social media platform. Like I said, we are live on the New Democratic Party's Facebook page as well as its YouTube page. You can drop a message in the chat. And of course, if you want to raise a question, you can drop a question there too as well. We have the president and leader of the New Democratic Party, Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday, here with us. And we are in the remainder, the home stretch of the New Times program here today. So like I said, feel free to jump in here at any time. Dr. Friday, as we are pretty much in the home stretch of the New Times program here today.
Yes, Colin.
Is it important that persons understand the messaging that is coming from the New Democratic Party?
Critically important, Colin.
And do you believe that it is resonating with the masses, and have you been seeing that in the population?
Absolutely. Colin, I go out all over the country. My colleagues, they go in their constituencies and they talk to people. People are desperate for somebody to listen and say, well, there's hope in this country. This is why we had the Hope rallies. It's essentially to send a message loud and clear to people. There is a better alternative. There is hope for the future. But hope itself is not a plan. It's what fuels the creation of the plan. And we have put together a plan. And I've told you there that we have to create an economy that functions, that works, that you have agriculture, tourism, the blue economy, and the new economy, which includes all the things, arts and sports and the entertainment industry and so forth, to try and make these into more sustainable endeavors, activities, by exploiting, developing their economic potential, making them part of our economy. That is what we will do as a government to rebuild the economy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to make sure that we have a viable basis for going forward. As I said, we can't borrow and beg for everything. When you borrow and you beg, fine, you use that, but you have to use it productively to create the infrastructure, to create more jobs and opportunities for our people. And it's important that people understand the difference in the visions between myself and the present PM and the Minister of Finance, between the NDP, my colleagues and me, and their government of encyclopedia and copybooks, that people get the message that there is a different and better way to do it. And it's not reinventing the wheel. Yes, we have updated a lot of the things that we have to do, but saying that agriculture has to be a backbone of the economy, that shouldn't be news to anybody. That is something that people in this country understand intrinsically. But this government has let fall by the wayside. Tourism has so much potential. We have one of the most beautiful countries anywhere in the Caribbean, perhaps, I would say, not perhaps, definitely anywhere in the world. We have a yachting sector that is still struggling to recover when we have the best sailing anywhere in the world. The Grenadines, you're sailing from all the way down the Grenadines and up to the mainland and so forth. People will tell you, unbeatable. And so we have those things that we need to do. Our fishing industry, because we are an archipelago, we have more water than we have land in our country. And so we need to be able to exploit that, to use it in a way that is constructive, meaning to say that you can make a decent living doing it, but at the same time protect the resource. That is what we are going to do. And the people are understanding that, and they're saying, the handout when they come election time, you get a little handout here and so forth and so forth. That can't substitute for a good job or a business opportunity or a better boat for the fisher folk to go out and spend a week rather than a day and make money that you can put aside something for a rainy day. They could fix the roof on their house. They don't just have to come in the morning, buy gas, put the boat back, fix the engine, and then you back out again and come back and repeat. And you seem like you're doing an endless cycle of just hand to mouth from day to day. We need to change that and use the model that they have done so successfully in Grenada. It's not rocket science. You just need to have a government that believes in our local people and give them the opportunity to do it. Don't supplant them at every opportunity you have, which is what they're planning to do now when they say they're going to build their own fishing fleet and then just hire local people to work on them. And then afterwards, if you want to get your own boat, that's up to you. I mean, how do you build a fishing industry like that? It's just ridiculous. So these guys, they have no ideas. They don't know what they're doing. And it's time for them to go.
Now that we are getting closer to the general elections, we want to know, persons want to know, and I am asking this too as well. What are the first things that you are excited about in terms of getting done as part of your priority as Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines once elected into office?
Colin, is to create jobs for people. That's what people want. We have said that we will ease the cost of living crisis immediately by reducing VAT from 16 to 13%. That helps everybody across the board. We are going to help the students by paying for the subjects at the end of 5 years, so that they can write the subjects that the teachers say that they are capable of doing. We are going to also make it cheaper for students to go to tertiary education by reducing interest rates. But these are things that, reduce costs. But we also still have to make it so that people can make a living. You have to have both things. You have the lowering of costs and the rising of employment and wages. And that is what we are going to be working on first and foremost, to get the economy functioning, to get people get better jobs, better paying jobs, and more jobs created, and business opportunities. Business opportunities don't just mean getting big foreign investors to come. Of course, that's an essential part of it. But our ordinary people have to be part of that process. We have to make it so that they can get access to credit to do their little enterprise that they might employ 4 or 5 people, 2 or 3 people, or maybe just themselves. But that is how our economy is. We are a small economy, a developing economy in a small country. And so we have to make it so that those persons who have an entrepreneurial spirit and they want to get into business, that the environment is there that enables them to do so. They can't go to the commercial banks and borrow. So you have to have a national development bank that helps those people to get access to credit, and also create an environment, a support structure within that institution that helps those people to manage their businesses. So your accounting and legal services and just business advice and marketing and so forth. that would be available, because the objective of the bank is not to make money off of people's backs. It is to get our local business people, our local entrepreneurs, our local farmers and fisher folk, to get them what they need to be able to succeed. And that means capital, and it also means the environment, the supporting mechanism that help them to get their businesses off the ground, and then to maintain them going forward, and then hopefully they become self-sustaining as they go forward. Those are the things that we believe that will help to transform the economy and create more jobs and better paying jobs to the people of this country. We don't have to be always at the back of the line for everything, except for the wrong things like crime and violence, yacht crime or murder and all them kinds of things that only pull us down and make people feel that somehow nothing good is going to happen for us. But there's a lot of good that will happen for us. And we in the Democratic Party will hasten that process.
All right. 29, well, exactly 1:30 now here in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Like I said, the phone lines are open. Please feel free to call and to interact with us here on the New Times program today. We have another call coming in. Let's take this call. Let's see who we have. Caller, welcome to the program. Hello.
Yes, please. Good morning.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Seeing that the unemployment situation has been so grievous in the country, and the private sector has not been encouraged to do better than they could right now, how would that affect the unemployment problem in St. Vincent and Grenadines today? That is for you, Dr. Friday.
Yeah, well, the government can't employ everybody, and government, to get the money to provide services and to employ people, where they're getting it from is from taxes. So the businesses are the lifeblood of the economy. And so we have to find a way to get our local businesses up and expanding and investing, and not just basically, if you make a little money, you say, okay, I'm going to buy real estate somewhere, and not investing it back in the country. To their credit, there are a number of local businesses who invest and put the money back into the country, and they create jobs and opportunities. You have to focus on the private sector. The present government, they spent a lot of time talking about private sector partnership in this budget, because now they realize that they're running out of steam as to what the government itself can actually do. But they never said that they really believe in the private sector. It was almost like a chastising of the private sector, a rebuke, a very condescending and patronizing tone that was adopted by the minister, and saying, listen, we have created this wonderful environment for you to be able to come and invest and do things, and it's up to you now to take advantage of it. And if you don't, we're not going to wait for you. Other people will come and take those opportunities, and then you will lose out. I mean, what kind of partnership is that? But that is like saying, listen, we don't really believe in you guys, but here we are throwing this out there. If you want to take it, it's up to you. If you don't, well, we will do our thing, because we are the spearhead. We are the ones who know what the country needs. We are the ones who know, have the money to invest, because we can borrow it and we can beg for it and all this kind of stuff. And feeling that they can do it without the private sector. They cannot.
But then,
the backbone of the country is the private sector. It is the businesses. It is all kinds of businesses that create the wealth and then generate the tax revenue for government to then hire people to provide services to us, whether it's police and teachers and nurses and so forth. You don't generate any money out of those things. You don't generate any money out of the school system, other than what the administrative fees they pay to pay teachers and so forth. No, it comes from government. Where does government get it? It's tax revenue. Where do they get tax revenue from? It's from the businesses and from persons who are employed. So, of course, those that has to be increased.
There's also this impression that it seems like government is always competing with the private sector.
Yes, and that is the problem you have with this present administration. They came into office so many years ago. They don't want to remember that now. Talking about how, almost like they have some vendetta against the local business houses, because the perception in their camp was that they supported NDP. And they were going to run a supermarket to show how it should be done, and close down this and close down that, and they don't care the consequences. I mean, look what they did to Bigger Bigs. Shut down one of the most, dynamic local entrepreneurs in this country, and just brought his business to a crashing halt. And for what reason? These are people who you need to encourage. They are putting their money in there. They have ideas. They have the courage and the skill to go forward, whether they support you or not. They're investing in the country. They are of the country. They create a vibrant private sector and ultimately a vibrant democracy because they're independent. But no, that is the problem. But you're quite right, Colin. This government, they're all about belatedly, they're realizing that they have to include the private sector. And instead of, making them feel welcome, they're chastising and patronizing and treating them as though somehow they're not worthy, that they don't have what the government has. They don't have that kind of zeal. They don't have the capital. They don't have I can't remember the word he exactly used. But you read the budget speech again and look over it or listen to what he said, and you will see it's not really a kind of a partnership with the private sector. It is just simply one of saying, you come now to the table. I have put a feast there for you. If you don't want it, then that's your business.
All right. Doc, your final comments. What would you like our viewers and our listeners today to be the takeaway from the program?
That, Colin, we've had a budget that was supposed to set the tone for the rest of this year, at least for the future for this country, that was supposed to bring hope to the country, and it failed to deliver. It was a budget of failed opportunities. We have nothing really hopeful to look forward to from this present government in 2024 because they have given, as one person said, with one hand, they said they're giving an increase in the minimum wage, and they've taken back with two hands with all the tax increases that they have. They have not addressed the cost of living crisis that people are feeling in the country. They have not reduced the VAT from 16 to 13 or 12 or whatever percentage they wanted to recognize that is going to bring relief to our people. They have not delivered any hope for creating better paying jobs, permanent jobs, for growing the economy at the rate that is necessary. Yes, they had the construction project at the port, which constitutes 20% of the GDP of the country. And the growth rate will be bumped up because this massive project, of course, will have an effect on spending on economic growth. But ultimately, that has to be sustainable. What will be the link between that and the local private sector, the farmers, the fishers, and the business people, the manufacturers, exporters? Those are things that need to be articulated. The government has to set out how they intend for this to be used to benefit the country overall. What I want people to understand is that in the New Democratic Party, we have a vision for the future of this country. We understand that we have to create an economy that functions, that's viable. And we used to have an economy that was based on agriculture. This present administration has brought that to its knees. We have to rebuild agriculture. We have to take full advantage of tourism to make this country and realize its true potential in tourism. We shouldn't be taking a backseat to anybody when it comes to tourism in this country. And we will accelerate that process. Then we have to also deal with the blue economy. We have to deal with our fishing industry. There's so much potential there. This present administration, this government, they talk about it and they don't deliver. And for the entertainers, the artists, the crafts people, the sports people, all of these people who have creative potential and been using that to bring our culture to the forefront. We want to say to you, there is economic benefit there as well. And we will look to see how we can make those. People call them the orange economy and so forth, but the point is that we are going to look to see how we can support those industries and to make them viable and to make them economic activities that contribute to our development. The people of this country should take away from this, Colin, that the present government, from what they delivered in the budget or failed to do, have lost their way. There is nothing to look forward to that is different and bold and creative and that will generate the kind of activity that is required to improve lives in this country. And at the New Democratic Party, we have a plan to do that going forward. They have adopted, at least in this budget very explicitly, our plan to increase or to lower the interest rates for students studying at tertiary institutions to 4.5%. They have adopted that same figure, 4.5%. Well, that's fine. They're welcome to do so. They should have done it 3 years ago when we introduced it, the students would have saved a hell of a lot more. But there are other things that we have said that they have adopted, and they don't ever, of course, acknowledge it, but that's fine. When we have good ideas, and we have plenty of them, they're free to use them, because we're doing it not for them. We're doing it for the people of this country. But think how much better we would do in government to put those ideas to work for the people, because we're focused on the people. I want to let the people know that I'm going to be out there. I'm going to come to your communities. I'm going to come and talk to you in your homes, in your yard, at the side of the road, by your shop, and so forth. And we will talk about how we can make this country better, how we can make our communities safe again, how we can provide opportunities for young people, so that when they come out of school, they don't have to feel that they are basically on their own to catch as catch can. We can make this country a better place. I want to be a part of that process, and I want you to trust me to do so, and we will get it done together. My colleagues and I can't wait for the opportunity to be of service in other ways to the people of this country. And you'll hear more from them later this week as they present their response to the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You just heard from the president and leader of the New Democratic Party, Dr. the Honorable Godwin Friday, on yet another edition of the New Times program. We thank you so very much for joining us here on Nice Radio. And of course, for also joining us live on Facebook and YouTube for our live stream. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of the New Times program. I was your host today, Colin Graham, and as always, may the Most High continue to guide us and protect us all, especially in these trying times. Stay blessed, and thank you for joining us.
Who feels it now?